This is Coda Radio, episode 107 for June 23rd, 2014. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Coda Radio, Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly talk show taking a pragmatic look at the art and business of software development and related technologies. This episode is brought to you by our two fine sponsors, DigitalOcean and Linux Academy. I'll tell you more about those great sponsors as this here show goes on. My name is Chris, and joining us every single week is our excellent host on the East Coast, Mr. Michael Dominic. Hey there, Michael.
Hey, good night, Chris.
Oh, are you sleepy, Mr. Dominic?
I'm always sleepy.
I know. It's been my thing lately, too. You know, I have a Fitbit that tracks my sleep, and the last week has been devastating. It's not been good at all. And you know, the worst part is, even though I'm exhausted, I got so much going on now, and this normally isn't a problem for me. Normally, like a podcast or an audiobook will knock me out, but I cannot fall asleep these days. I've just got so much going on, you know? You ever have that problem where it's just your head spinning at 100 miles per hour, and it's like...
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah, it's it's the worst. So yeah, I have not been sleeping very well, so I'm there with you. I feel you, man. But you know what? We're still gonna have a good show today.
Absolutely.
We have a good topic lined up, and I think you nailed it perfectly when you kind of gave it just the title of slowing down a bit. You know, is there a difference between comfort? Is there a difference between laziness, comfort, and just expertise and experience? Like maybe you just know what. And this is something I have found myself too, where like. Sometimes I'll be like, why am I not pushing myself harder to work on thing X? And then in the back of my mind, I go, it's because you've done this 100 times, dude. You know you've got this. You don't have to worry about it. And then every now and then I'm like, oh, I got to push. So there's a lot of interesting things we can explore there. Plus, we've got a lot of really good email this week. Great feedback. Thank you guys so much for sending in so much good stuff. We're going to get to some of that. This is sort of the calm before the I.O. storm. Google I.O. 2014 kicks off on Wednesday. So we got a little bit of time. I tell you, I hope Google impresses Mr. Dominic, because I'm ready to go live in a cabin for like a month.
I don't think they will. And Chris, I have some wonderful news to share.
Oh, yeah?
FizzBuzz has claimed another soul.
You know, we got an email from somebody who's like, what's that thing that Mike keeps talking about? I've never heard of it before. So there you go. What happened?
Well, someone couldn't pass FizzBuzz. Kind of the normal thing here.
Oh, you mean the standard affair now? Well... I guess if people aren't listening to Coda Radio, then that's their own fault. If you're out there, make sure you can pass the FizzBuzz test before you go talk to somebody to get a job.
Please do.
Okay, email came in this week from Dalek, and that's how you say it. He's responding to episode 106. He says, hey guys, great show. I'm not a dev by profession, but I have to work with them every day, so watching Coda Radio helps with the translation. I wanted to impart some feedback and advice to a question that was posed during episode 106. The writer was going to be leaving the armed forces soon with a CS degree and was worried about his chances of finding good employment. I would echo something that Mike said. You have military experience. I work in the DC metro area, and I have found that in the past, companies around here are more willing to take on someone with military experience who is trying to enter a particular field. I'm not sure if this is still the case, but some contracts, it was considered good practice to have X number of ex-military on our payroll. It's even better if you know how to do what you're supposed to do. My other piece of advice would be, would take some time to figure out what the current trends are that interest you. Now, this is an interesting point because we also got an email from someone else who's leaving the armed forces, kind of in the same situation as our previous emailer. So this kind of is a response to both of their emails. He says, get some practice to hone your skills in those areas. I have been in the position before to select between candidates who show initiative of learning on their own. To me, it means you learn without the need of immediate incentives. That might be just to get your job or over someone else. My only caution is to be prepared to be tested. If you say you have been studying why for 6 months, they might ask you questions about why, and that someone with beginner intermediate skills should at least know. Good luck. And this from Dalek. So it's good advice there for our friends leaving the armed forces that are looking for some development jobs. And
Absolutely.
good to hear someone echo your thoughts that the military experience will be a benefit for them.
It's so rare for people to echo my thoughts, really. Unless it's in some sort of sarcastic kind of, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that Dominic, that guy. Yeah, Voldley writes in, and he's feeling my groove this week. He says, "Hey, Chris and Mike, I emailed you months ago about being totally burned out, and I'm still in college. It's been many months since then, and I'm totally back into programming and actually doing an internship in a big company. I'm very thankful for my early burnout since now I understand how to avoid it. The reason I got burned out was anxiety and high expectations with all my projects I had, very high expectations from myself, and felt disjointed when I could not meet them. So it made me stop building things since I felt I had even... it made me stop building things since I felt sad even after completing them. The negative feedback from myself was too much. The anxiety was the second biggest factor since I would think about my code all the time and could never look at the big picture. Also, since I was thinking about it all the time, the negative feedback from the high expectations was greater too. As soon as I fixed them, I was back having fun even more than before. And now for my question. All right, here it goes. Mike, you designed some software that doesn't necessarily Jeez, this is horrible. Mike, you designed some software that doesn't necessarily be built upon, or you know what? I can't even read his question. Sorry, buddy. You gotta reformat that and send it back in. But I liked his first part about the anxiety and the feedback. I can't read it. It's literally unreadable.
Brutal.
You want me to, Mike? You designed some. Okay.
No.
All right. I'm just saying. You know what? And also, we're clamping down on emails on the show a little bit, and some of these emails are getting way too long. Like that email was way too long, and I didn't throw about a dozen emails into the show this week because they were all way too long. Now, here's what you guys could do: is if you want to expand upon it, so that way we have more information, put the part you want in the show, like the paragraph, and then underneath that, expand upon that. Or if you want to have a big conversation, have that in the subreddit. We really want your feedback. So I'm not trying to harsh on that because you guys have been awesome this week, but we cannot read books on the air. We can't do it anymore. It's too long. All right. We do have one more book, though. No, actually, this one's not too bad. It's just a paragraph, and then we'll wrap up.
So wait, let's respond to the portion of the email you did actually read.
Okay.
So the burnout thing. That's going to happen. And the best way to deal with it, to be honest, is just to unplug, right? Don't worry about it. Get away from tech. Don't listen to podcasts. Go read a book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go read a book. Boy, that's not a bad... Don't listen to podcasts. Hurts, but you're right. It cuts deep, but you're right.
It cuts deep, doesn't it?
Because, just don't think... Put your headspace somewhere else. That's why I want to go to a cabin. I'm not kidding. I want to get the F out of here. There's a cabin Matt's been telling me about. Doesn't even have cell signal. That sounds amazing. No messages. No internet. Oh...
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, yeah. I mean, really, because really, you got to remember, you guys. I don't think when the brain evolved, it had our current existence in mind. It did not expect all this crap coming at us, all of this connected stuff, the internet, none of it. And so sometimes we just have to acknowledge the limitations of our gray matter and give it a rest and shift gears for a while and just live a different existence for a little bit. And I'm preaching from somebody. I don't practice what I preach, but I want to one day.
No one does.
Yeah, no. Okay, well, our last email, and then we'll wrap up on the feedback mostly. Yes. Dwayne writes in on Apple's ecosystem. He says, "Hi, Chris and Michael. I really liked this episode of Core Radio last week. I just wanted to comment on your observation of Apple and ask a question. Apple does have an advantage with their ecosystem. Eventually, Microsoft and Google may have to do something to counter it, which I would argue they are right now. My question is this. Will Linux also provide a cozy ecosystem for coders? Also, like Ubuntu and SUSE. He says he does agree with the Play Store having issues, but maybe somehow Linux could. So what do you think? Mike, can Linux offer an ecosystem for developers?
I could and will are probably two very different things in this case. Is it possible? Sure. Is it likely? Probably not, right?
Well, and in some ways, isn't it already like at the infrastructure level, at the kernel and the server side stuff?
I would say, that's... See, I read his email a little differently. I was thinking more of like the App Store sort of thing.
Yeah, I think he was too. I'm just saying, there is that aspect.
Sure. If you want to count like the kernel, the server side kind of thing, then Linux is one of the largest platforms, right? But if you want to count like commercial, proprietary, for sale apps, in quotes, right? Probably not.
Well, and I think it depends on how you look at it, because I think what Linux offers is sort of the SteamOS advantage, where if you want to build a platform, if you want to make a platform available to people and you want to own the stack, then Linux is the tool you use to build that. So where right now most developers aren't going to jump on SteamOS because it's not big enough, but if you have to be a certain size, and maybe once SteamOS gets to a certain market penetration with a company like Valve behind it, it will become a platform that offers exclusive incentives for developers to target. Maybe that'll be through the Steam store, it'll be through some sort of hardware support that they've integrated with a third party or whatever it is. There maybe eventually SteamOS could be a platform with incentives. And I think that's what Linux offers, is the ability for somebody to go out there and say, we want to control our platform's destiny. We want to. It's a crazy amount of work. Most people can't pull it off, and even fewer people successfully pull it off. But we want to give it a shot and build it from end to end. Or you look at a company like DigitalOcean, where they want to build a product they can offer. That their entire stack is Linux based, right? So it just kind of it depends on the, for Joe developer creating desktop apps. I think things like,
I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not Linux per se. It's more like the desktop environments and the toolkits, right?
It's also the monetization model is going to be hard.
Yeah, for desktop for sure too.
Yeah.
All right. Well, speaking of Linux, let's talk about our first sponsor, and then we'll jump into our topic of the day, and that is Linux Academy. Go over to linuxacademy.com/coders to get a discount on Linux Academy. So what is Linux Academy? Check it out. Go over there right now. You can save $5 a month by going to linuxacademy.com/coders. They've got step-by-step video courses, downloadable and comprehensive study guides. And when the courseware needs it, they spin up their own virtual server. And one of the things I've mentioned is the great thing about the model that Linux Academy has is you get new courseware as it's introduced by them as part of your subscription. So they've just added AWS SysOps Associates, and they've also just added the Hybrid Technologies AWS course. And 2 new self-paced Linux labs are coming this week, one for Nagios and one for rsync. And they add these in here, and you just continue to get access to these. You get the course material, you get the step-by-step video guides, you get the self-paced labs, you get the test, the quizzing. It's really cool because you get to keep track of your progress as you go. Linux Academy allows you to pick up right where you left off. So if you've just got a little bit of time one night, you can work on it and then stop right where you're at. Next time you log in, Linux Academy will say, hey, brah, this is right where you left off. And if you're part of a team, if you're a group, they've also got team discounts available. I think the integration now with AWS, where they'll spin up an AWS instance for you during the testing, or a Linux box, so you can do real-world scenario testing. I think that's extremely awesome. I think it's one of their very unique advantages. linuxacademy.com/coders. They always have great stuff coming. New stuff on OpenStack is there as well. Core syllabus includes live labs. I think that's really important because you'll actually walk away with experience with S3 or experience with setting up Nginx or Nagios or all kinds of things. GitLab. If these things are important to you, if you could know just a little bit more about these things at your own pace, during your own time, and make yourself a little more effective, give yourself a little more time during the day because you become a little more efficient, or maybe get that certification that lets you charge a little more or makes you a little more hireable, but you can do it at your own pace, under your own control. linuxacademy.com/coders. Go check them out. Why, we've got an awesome discount. Get $5 off a month. That's a great deal. linuxacademy.com/coders. Go see what I've been talking about. Go log in, even just for a little bit, and try out some of the self-paced labs. Download some of the course materials. Watch some of the videos. Listen to some of the audio. Check out their AWS instances. It's pretty awesome stuff, you guys. I mean, it's an incredible resource that this team has built from the ground up, and I'm really impressed. linuxacademy.com/coders. All right, Mr. Dominic, I feel like you have an itch to scratch this week on our topic, a little bit about slowing down. Tell me what's on your mind, sir.
I do. So, yeah, I mean, over the last, I'd say, couple months, kind of been honing in on the tool chain we've been using, kind of, not experimenting as much as going with what works. And that's been great.
But
I'm not sure that there's a but.
Okay, I just felt like you might have been building towards one.
No, it's interesting because every week there's 4 or 5 new JavaScript frameworks that come out, right?
Yeah.
And it's starting to realize that these don't really matter. Right, I mean, let's look at this, right? You have Ember.js. I'm just using JavaScript because they're easy to pick on. Backbone. I'm just typing this into Chrome right now. So if you type in Ember.js v, You'll get versus Angular versus Backbone versus Knockout versus jQuery.
Yeah.
And I could keep going down on this list if I really wanted to. Um,
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now myself.
right. It doesn't matter, right? I mean, at the end of the day, does your customer, certainly the end user at least, really care if it's in Backbone, Ember,
No.
Angular?
But it does take your time. It does take your focus to track these things. It takes your energy to
Absolutely.
try them. It rattles around in the back of your head. Should I be experimenting with a side project with this? Am I missing out on something? Could this be doing this better? And you really get in that position when you're stuck and you're frustrated and you just are looking for a solution. You start thinking, gosh, maybe this could do this better. That has to happen,
All right,
right?
ready? I typed in Rails versus. Then you get Django, Node, PHP, Sinatra, ASP.NET, ASP Classic. It's crazy, right? Certainly there's the grass is the greener on the other side
Yes.
issue, but I'm starting to, you know, are we really solving problems that have to be solved with all this new crap?
Well, probably not in most cases. I mean, or they're
Right.
probably just solving them in new ways that are better for some things.
Well, it's interesting, right? Because so Rails, right? Rails solved the problem of dev itself took a long time.
Yes.
And Rails optimized the crap out of your workflow so that you could get something developed quickly. MVC was just copying Rails, and all the .NET guys just died a little bit inside. PHP was optimizing for insecurity. Sorry, guys, I have to do it. And Node is optimizing for concurrency. But how often do you actually need that much concurrency, right?
Yeah, it's the people who do make a big noise, right? Because they're
Right.
they're high traffic.
Right. I mean, they're when you're Twitter and you outstrip the power of Rails and you need to do some crazy JVM half and half thing, awesome, right? You're Facebook and you need to write your own PHP to native code compiler, great, right? There's all kinds of crazy stuff that people on the high end need to do and are super vocal about.
Is it weird that I, for some really lame reason, find a comparison between what you're saying and the smartphone industry too? Like I find I guess what I'm saying is I feel like there's a bit of an industry now around these things that hype it up. Like the tech journalism
Right.
and the dev journalism, like they hype up these things and get everybody thinking about it, but they're not actually people that make things, that use these things for extended periods of time. They're just people that generate a lot of discussion and a lot of blog posts and a lot of tweets. It sort of gins up interest and makes things sound more important than they really are, when people that are actually just nose down getting work are kind of like looking at it and going, oh, okay, that's interesting. It's a neat new thing, I
Well,
suppose.
it's funny. It's kind of like my response to Node, right? That's awesome if I need concurrency like that. But 99.99% of the time, I just need to get someone, their budget's less than what we would bid, so we need to go lower. Oh, Rails, we can get it done faster. Therefore, meet their budget, right?
So your point too here is that not only is it sometimes not solving a problem, but sometimes it doesn't even solve the problem better.
Well, my point is also, as I think you go on, you gain a certain level of knowledge
Yeah.
in a number of technologies.
Yeah.
And, for instance, if you ask me to throw up a backend, I can do it faster in Rails than I can do it in anything else.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, Java Play might be a close second, but probably not that close, right? I'm just starting to wonder if, as a community, are we wasting a lot of effort here? And I'm using Rails as an example, right? I'm not suggesting everybody should go become a Rails developer. I'm just saying that, do we need like 30,000 MVC frameworks for backend web development? Do we need I'll give you a great example, right? So I don't like Swift very much.
Yeah.
right?
I've noticed.
But Swift is at least solving a problem. It's a problem that I don't think really needs to be solved, but it's solving the problem of Objective-C is based in C, and C is hard for stupid people. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So Apple wants to widen the net and make iOS app development cheaper by flooding the pool with crap. Fine.
Yeah.
But to me, that's actually legitimate, even though I'm bitter and angry about it, because you're solving a problem by adding this technology, right? What is it? What's replacing Dalvik on Android? I forgot the name. I just read a good article about it too. It's killing me, chat room. What's replacing Dalvik? Is it like Arc? No, that's not Arc.
No, it's not Arc. No.
That's the Apple thing. Art. Thank you, ART.
Art.
that's solving a problem, right? It's going to be faster, and you're not going to have to do a ton of work to make your stuff faster.
Right.
Awesome.
Yes.
That's great, especially on really crappy low-end Android phones. Anything the platform can give you is a huge improvement.
That
right?
seems like a worthwhile time investment.
Right. Android runtime. Thank you. That's I am down with that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't know if I'm so down with all these extra MVC frameworks. Or, we have Backbone, we have Ember, we have Angular. Did we need all three?
Right. I think it's wasted effort.
Exactly, Richard. Exactly. We finally agree.
You know what and the thing is like, I think at first on the surface, it's like, oh, well, what's the cost? What's the problem? You have all of these options. You just pick the right tool for the job and just code on and be happy. But I that's what I would have said 107 weeks ago. But now that we've done this show, we get emails every single week from developers that are talking about how overwhelmed they are tracking all this stuff, and it gives them insecurity about their ability to keep up and all of that, and it burns them out.
Well, it's funny because there's definitely, as we've been doing the show in the beginning, I felt a lot of pressure to kind of keep up, even though I normally might not have tracked everything. 107 weeks in, I realize it doesn't matter, right?
Right.
Because if the same customer came to me and said, we need this app, we need it to be a database enabled app, an app could even be web app, right? What are you going to do it in? Do you really care?
I almost feel...
I'll tell them, but do they?
Right.
Right.
Like I almost feel like this is the trend of technology in general. Like it starts out, it's really agile. It's all over the map. You gotta, you really gotta stay with it. And then as it sort of matures and evolves, the practicality sets in, and you just you find what works, and you just kind of stick with it. And isn't that maybe just what we're seeing sort of as shaking out here a little bit?
Well, I don't think we are, though, right? I think there's certain voices in the community that are starting to say, who gives a crap? But I actually think we're seeing the opposite. I think we're seeing more duplication of effort. I think we're seeing more, particularly in the web development space, everybody's got to have their own freaking framework. And to be fair, iOS had the same problem for a long time where everybody and their brother had their own networking library. Hell, I have one. That the obnoxious Zane Swafford ported into Swift. Just to piss me off.
Really? Wow,
yes.
He's all in, isn't he?
He did it in less than a day. I was very annoyed.
Wow, he is totally...
Yeah.
It's negative in the freedom dimension.
Yes, that was clever. Ironically, you cannot run Swift on Xcode 5, so I was totally unable to test it or look at the merge request.
So it sits.
It sits until I can download Xcode 6.
Oh, that's too funny.
Yeah, which I could do. I just don't have time. I'm teasing a little bit, right? And I'm making fun of myself because I also did the networking thing. But, a little networking library in Objective-C takes maybe a month or two, even less actually, because it was really, really fast. An entire web development framework takes a long time, right? That's probably more than one person. I don't know. I guess I'm starting to wonder, if we didn't have Ember, Angular, Backbone, and the 8,000 other JavaScript libraries, let's say we had 3, right? Let's say we even have 2, like Pepsi and Coke. Would those 2 choices be awesome? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do know what you mean.
Instead of 30,000 mediocre choices, how about 2 really good
If we
choices?
just could focus.
Right, if we could focus a little bit and all understand that we can't each own our own little...
But when we see that in the technology industry, doesn't it always lead to stagnation?
Well, so I guess I would ask you an existential question. What is stagnation? Is it stagnant if it works fine, gets the job done, and doesn't cause, some horrible security risks?
Well, look at XP, right? You could say XP was all of those things, a great stable platform for developers to target.
Right.
For 10 years. They knew exactly what they were going to get. But on the flip side, there's a lot of frickin' things that were held back by XP, especially in web development and application and security development.
That would be true stagnation, right? I think there's a difference between stagnation. I think there's 2 extremes, right? One extreme is stagnation where you're living in IE6. I think that's what you're getting at, right?
Yeah.
And the other extreme is what I think we have in certainly the front-end web development community right now, of everybody's got to own their little corner of GitHub with their own library that they're promoting, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that nobody should open source things. In fact, I encourage people I open source as much as possible, but
Right.
I don't aggressively promote my stuff to get folks to use it.
Right. It's not
I
an
open
ego.
s-
It's almost like an ego thing
right,
for some of them.
right, exactly. And hey, that's a great way to market yourself as a freelancer or
Yeah,
as a
but don't lead
developer.
me around by the dick and make me waste my time
Right,
for your ego.
and don't some of the claims particularly on these JavaScript libraries are kind of ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
Like, don't tell me it's gonna change the world of
Right.
concurrency or
Yeah.
whatever you're gonna tell me.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. I don't have a solution. Like with the many things that are complicated, this is more of a discussion.
Right.
And the one thing that's starting to really stick out to me is that I can do a lot in Rails, Ubuntu, and Objective C. Do I really need to go bother and at what point am I actually doing a disservice to a customer by
Right.
experimenting on them? Right.
Right. Yeah. Very much.
At
so.
one point, is it malpractice? And at what point, on the other hand, is it malpractice to not
Stagnate.
change?
Right.
Exactly.
That is a very tough line to walk. And how do you know if you're properly answering that question without following these things?
I don't know. I mean, I what I've taken to is following the big ones, right?
Yeah.
So I follow what's up with the Ember people. I follow what's up with the Angular people, and I kind of dropped off of Backbone, even though that's the one I actually use because Backbone actually seems to have slowed down a little bit.
Well, and not to turn this into an obnoxious podcast plug, but one of the things that I do is I find people that I trust their opinion on the situation, or at least people that I know what their
Right.
biases are, and I feel like I'm comfortable with that. I'll take an example. Like, I don't particularly follow the internal politics of Microsoft all too closely. However, if I follow Paul Thurrott and Mary Jo Foley, I pretty much have my bases covered, and I can reach out to Ed Bot, or I can extend out from there if I need to. And for me, that's how I sort of do meta coverage. But even that is quite a bit for some people.
So what I've been doing is I follow a few blogs because I'm a big reading person, but also a few podcasts, like you say, from each community.
Yeah.
Not to plug another podcast, but Ruby Rogues. I like them a lot, even though sometimes they go weighing into nitpicky crap. But they have a good handle on the Rails community in particular. And if there's something major that you need to know about, they know it.
Right.
And
Exactly.
they cover it.
Exactly.
Now, there's 8,000 other Rails podcasts. that I
Yeah.
listen
Yeah.
to, right.
Yeah.
I follow one or two Apple podcasts, but again, there are 8,000 of those.
Right.
I would say the only thing I haven't found is a good Android developer podcast because I don't know if that's just the nature of Android development because it's kind of Java and it's kind of
Right. Yeah, I sometimes listen to Twits all about Android, but and the guys there do a good show, but they will never have a bad thing to say about Google in their life. Right? Everybody on there is very, very, fanatically supportive of Google, which is fine for a podcast, and that's a particular kind of podcast that appeals to a hell of a lot of people. But I don't, I like to hear both sides of the story. It is a little more difficult in the Android space. And I'm not particularly. I think part of it. So what you're saying about all of this, honestly, is starting to apply to me when it comes to technology a little bit, and I almost wonder if that is almost detrimental to my job because I'm beginning to lose interest in things like. I noticed like I have no motivation to buy any of the new consoles. No, and that's not normal for me. Normally, at least from a technology standpoint, want to see what they can do. But now, like the little amount of gaming I do, Steam on Linux is fine. Mobile devices, I've gone from somebody who has to have every premier Android phone, somebody who might have bought 3 Android phones in a year, to somebody who's thinking about maybe just switching to a feature phone and not carrying an Android device anymore. Right? I'm making all of these like I went all in on some of this technology. Now I'm kind of like burning out a little bit and going, this is not worth it. I'm not getting enough out of it anymore. I don't know what it is exactly. And part of it too is like, the more stuff you accumulate, the more stuff you have to manage and own and keep up to date and have power for and have networking for. And it just, it gets to the point where I have an entire corporate infrastructure worth of technology. And I'm looking around going, I'm managing technology constantly. So I kind of burn out from that angle too. I don't know if that's a type of burnout or just a type of changing of view over time. But I got to think too, some of it is like the mobile industry just isn't quite as proto-explosive as it was. It was the Big Bang for a few years there, and now the universe is sort of materialized and the planets are sort of slowing down and established, and I kind of look around the universe and go, oh, okay, well, not quite as cool as I was hoping, but whatever, I'll go with it. It's kind of where I'm at now. I'm not quite as enthralled by it as I once was. I don't know. I'm turning into a minimalist. Maybe that's what it is.
I know. We're all becoming old, grouchy men here. That's really what's happening.
Yeah, I'm a cunt says, yep, Chris needs to take a vacation. I do. I need to go in a cabin. I was thinking what I ought to do is go detox. I got to go. So Matt was telling me about this cabin where there's no connectivity. I go stay there for like a couple of days with no internet, no smartphone, no nothing, and I go through withdrawals, and then I come back desperately appreciative of my technology. You think that would work?
Nice.
All right. Well,
I don't know if that would work.
I got something. Speaking of frameworks that was sent into the show, I wanted to share. Is there any other thing on our main hoopla topic here? That you
No,
want?
I think we're good. I think I would ask though the listeners if you want to kind of go over this a bit in the Reddit. We could follow up again next week.
Yes, very much would like to hear your guys' thoughts on this, and you can also email us, but try to keep it briefer. But we'd really like your feedback is one of my favorite things about this show, you guys. So we really do appreciate it.
Chris wants to hear from you as little as possible.
Well, no, I just like everybody to be brief. But the subreddit is great for longer form stuff because then other folks can jump in and take advantage of your effort and insights there. Before we go to a great pick this week, I want to thank DigitalOcean. Head over to DigitalOcean.com and use the promo code CODERJUNE. Just a little bit time left to take advantage of our June promo code and give Coder Radio a boost. So what is DigitalOcean? Holy crap. Man, am I glad you asked, because this is going to solve some problems for you. Check this out. DigitalOcean is simple cloud hosting dedicated to offering the most intuitive and easy way to spin up a cloud server. And that is absolutely legit. Users can create a cloud server in about 55 seconds, and pricing plans start at only $5 per month. And for $5 a month, you get 512 megabytes of RAM, a 20 gigabyte SSD, and a blazing fast CPU. And they're going to attach all of that to 1 terabyte of tier 1 bandwidth. And this is the thing about DigitalOcean. This is the package. It's unbelievable the kind of density you can get on a 20 gigabyte SSD with 512 megs of RAM on a Linux box with modern CPUs. It is unfreaking believable. And you can get 2 months for free when you use our promo code CODERJUNE. DigitalOcean has data center locations in New York, San Francisco, Singapore, and Amsterdam. Their interface is simple. Their control panel is super intuitive, and power users can replicate that control panel with their straightforward API that I hear rocks. Go over to DigitalOcean.com. Check out their SSD-only cloud infrastructure. Check out how easy it is to spin up a DigitalOcean droplet, to back it up, to replicate it. They have secure networking, so you can have front-end servers and back-end servers. It's all running on top of KVM virtualization, which is one of the best in the industry. And they wrap it all up with that amazing intuitive control panel. And when I talk about some of my current frustrations with technology, honestly, when I think about packages like DigitalOcean and what they offer, it kind of gives me hope that we are at least on the right path. DigitalOcean shows you how you can take something as complicated as virtual machine provisioning up in the cloud in data center locations around the world, how they can provision something for you and make the UI so accessible you can do it in under a minute. It's fundamentally game-changing. Go over to DigitalOcean.com and use the promo code CODERJUNE when you check out. I really appreciate a company like DigitalOcean who locks in on something and then just iterates and has grit to make it better and better and better every single month. DigitalOcean.com, promo code CODERJUNE. And a huge thank you to DigitalOcean for sponsoring the Coder Radio program. It rocks. Okay, so we've talked a lot about PHP. Some good, some bad, mostly bad. But we did have a little love that came in from viewer Scott. Scott writes in, he says, hey, Coder Radio, I wrote in before about a PHP environment, and I heard about that 17-year-old asking which framework to use. I think that was in last week's episode, or the week before. He says, now, MVC definitely takes some time to wrap your head around and learn. One framework I definitely recommend, and was just yelling when I heard the question asked on the show, is Yi. Or I think it's pronounced Yi. It's Y-I-I. It is simple, lightweight, straightforward, and creates a structure, but it also doesn't get in your way with templates and restrictions for specific methods. Ultimately, you decide how little or how much you want to use the framework. In this situation, Cake or Symphony are a little overkill for him, in my opinion. Not to say you can't get over, not that complicated is bad, but check out Yi, Y-I-I, and we have a link to that in the show notes for a peach. So there you go, a little PHP love.
Hey man, you got it. You know, we love everybody except for people who use PHP. What were we talking about?
Wow. You know, you talk about not getting distracted by the shiny. Well, PHP, my friend, has been around for a long time and has served a lot of people quite well.
I
Quite well.
know it's a horrible truth.
I have one more question I thought maybe we'd answer just because I don't know, man. I wasn't totally down on our Google I/O predictions, but I felt like we got really kind of on an anti-Google bandwagon towards the end. All justifiably, I kind of felt like. But Cerebral Vortex 86 wanted to know. He was curious after the Google Bash Fest, as he put it. Do we really think that Apple or Microsoft are any better, or are they just kind of equally as evil in this regard? And maybe Google is held to a higher standard?
I'm not sure I buy that.
I actually think it's 100% the opposite. And in fact, I think that's one of the reasons I feel compelled to push back so much is because there is such an army of people who've been bought over by Google's, proclaiming of openness and summer of code, which is, I mean, Google generally has some good stuff and that people see that and they attach to that and they have a hard time thinking that one company can on one hand do something good and the company can also do something bad.
Yeah, I actually kind of feel like I agree with you. Google gets a huge free pass.
And I think it's like on technology too. Like I think there's stuff in Android that is absolutely unbelievably still bad and nobody mentions it. Or the Nexus 7 tablet ships and it has a flaw where if you drain the battery all the way down it goes into a reboot cycle and it affects thousands of Nexus 7 owners and yet not a big deal.
So, you're probably not going to agree, but I feel like Microsoft in particular gets a really bad rap.
No, I do agree.
Okay. I mean, they've obviously done bad things, but
I mean, they're reaping what they've sowed.
Right, but no one assumes when Google releases something that it's evil. When Microsoft releases something, people are always like, oh, they're going to...
You know what I think? I think Google is shitting their... Not to swear, I'm sorry. I think Google is crapping their pants over the public image that is beginning to form around them.
Yeah.
I think, like, if you look how they just bought Dropcam, but they buy them via Nest, so that way they can say, don't worry, Google's not in your home, it's
Google's
Nest.
not in your home, it's Nest.
That's crap.
Exactly.
That's crap. I mean, even if it's absolutely legit now, it won't be in 5 years, right? I mean, but they're doing these kinds of things, and like when they buy, this is going back to Into the Plex, when they buy data centers in towns and stuff, they buy them under fake company names, so that way people don't get freaked out that a Google data center is going in their town.
So, I mean, devil's advocate on that one, right? They probably do that, and they definitely do that because if you look like a smaller company, people are more willing to negotiate with you.
And security reasons and all that.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure.
But I think they are very aware of a growing... I think it's one of the reasons they do that. I don't think it is the reason. I think they are aware of a growing public opinion that is beginning to change, and they are trying to combat that as much as possible, but also still push forward what they think they need to do next.
I think that's fair, yeah. It's a tough problem for them to solve, right? Because one of the issues, and I don't want to hit this too hard because I've gone on about it before.
Yeah.
Is that when Google enters a market, they release their product for free, at least at no monetary cost, right? That effectively levels the playing field. And not in the everybody's even way, but levels as in, burns it to the ground.
It becomes a race to the bottom.
Right. It makes it very destructive. I don't know if there's any way to do that and not be evil, right? And I mean evil in the,
Actions speak louder than words kind of way?
Well, I kind of mean it, to be honest, in the antitrust sense. Microsoft ended up in antitrust court because they were using their weight to strangle potential competition, right? Well, certainly anybody who's thinking of doing a paid email service like Gmail or anybody who wants to do, paid documents via your web browser is going to have a hell of a time.
I think that's some of the reason. I think some of the support for Google comes from the fact that they're kicking Microsoft's ass. I think there's still some of that original OG Microsoft hate that's fueling the love for Google.
But not even Microsoft. I'm thinking about the next Microsoft, right? I'm not thinking about Microsoft. They're an enterprise and gaming company, but they're really an enterprise company.
Yeah,
right?
they're going to be fine.
They're going to be just fine. I mean, they're not even going to ever, they're not even the next IBM. They're going to do better than IBM.
Yeah,
they're going to be just fine.
Yeah.
But certainly, Microsoft of 1989 would not be in such good shape.
Wouldn't be able to exist today.
Right. I mean, they'd be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah. But technology changes,
Right, but at what point is it a natural evolution or just, a very powerful force
Taking advantage
being
of their market
right,
position.
being
Yeah.
hostile to developing companies? And I'm not, I guess I am suggesting that they are, but I'm not, there's this whole bandwagon that the government should pursue them with an antitrust case. I'm not sure we're quite there yet, but definitely, if I'm Google, I don't know if I'm releasing too many more products for free
Yeah.
because that seems a little tone deaf to me,
They
right?
might not have a choice because they spent $4 million alone in 2014 so far on federal lobbying, and they have an army of lobbyists. I have an article in the show notes from coast to coast at the state level that are participating in state-based policy issues that affect Google. Understandably so, because they have initiatives like Google Fiber and self-driving
Right.
car and privacy issues that they have to work at the federal level. But Google now has one of the largest lobbying arms in the technology industry. They literally have an army of lobbyists.
See, that's the thing. Google is not really a tech company anymore. They are a major industry, right? They are a major enterprise now.
Yeah, they're one of the number one advertisers in general in the advertising business, which
Right.
is a multi-billion-dollar business. And every tech company that gets to a certain size has to have lobbyists. Google used to have none, and then they sort of
And they paid dearly for that mistake.
yeah, exactly. And so I'm not condemning them for doing it. It's the
Well,
way
and
the
the other
crappy
thing is
system works.
they're not all bad, right? I mean, certainly some of their lobbying efforts, particularly against the telco industry, are, I would think, in everybody's interest.
Yeah, I love them kicking the ass of ISPs who don't want to up the bandwidth, and then they come in with
Right.
Google Fiber and shake it up.
I mean, anybody who bitch slaps Comcast,
Right.
that's fine. And
Can't be all
again,
bad.
but Comcast is, again, that kind of player who's so big that they can wield so much influence to shut down smaller competition. Or frankly, competition that's not even that small, right? I.e., Time Warner.
Right.
Um, it's tough. It's going to be a long fight, and there's this other thing. This Apple v Google v Microsoft. None of them have to lose for Google to win, because Google is playing a totally like Apple only wins when you buy an Apple product.
Right. Right.
Apple has the most simple business model on the planet. They make shit. They charge you a lot of money for it.
Yeah.
Microsoft is in this weird place where they make software. They kind of charge the guy who you're going to buy that product from for
Right.
the software, but you never really pay them. And
Right. Yep. Yep.
It's a really weird indirect relationship.
Plus, they have reoccurring services, and then they have
yeah,
the enterprise, yeah.
they're really a software company, right?
Right,
And Satya Nadella is right on the mark. Google is like, hey, the first hit's free, right? Google's kind of,
Hey, man, try this.
don't worry, kid, this is a pixie stick. Like, Google's a little creepy.
Well, and I wonder, where does Amazon fit? Because I think Amazon might be the company, the
I
group.
think Amazon, yeah, they want to be like the Walmart version
Yeah.
of Apple, right?
And they've
They're
got their
kind of-
own. They've got their own platforms now. They got everything from they got e-readers, tablets, phones. I mean, they're
But
really.
the fire's a joke. I mean, the only way that would have been interesting is if they sold it for $200 flat.
I mean, I don't.
Nope.
I totally agree there. However, people in the mumble room have told me, hey, my folks are interested in the Fire. Amazon and I could see that some of the older folks in my family too have really, really like trust Amazon. Like they've grown to really trust that brand, and like they're all Kindle owners. Everybody in and I'm thinking of the wife's family. They've all bought Kindles, right? Like they're all into it big time. So.
It's complicated.
I mean, but even then, Google still kind of wins. Even though it's a reskinned Android, it's still Android at the end of the day.
Right, that's the thing. The thing about Google is Google doesn't win or lose based on your purchase.
Right.
Google wins
When you do a Google search.
even not, right? You may, you could be one of those guys who's like, I hate Google, I'm not going to use Google. And you go on some guy's website and he's got Google ads.
I mean, yeah, that's true, yeah.
You don't actually need to be a Google customer for Google to win, and I think that's a very strong position to be in.
So don't you think then long term the company that has the least chance of succeeding is Apple? Because you got Amazon's going to be Walmart, Google is going to win regardless, and Microsoft's got a solid future sort of spread out between licensing and reoccurring services and cloud and all that kind of stuff. It's Apple that has the least amount of flexibility, and I mean right now they have some market incentives with software and hardware integration, but how long can that last?
Well, there's always going to be a high end, right? And I think that's where Apple kind of lives.
Right. Which explains they hired that retail chief who came from that swanky shop.
I mean, I think Apple is going to be your, a business I know a little bit more about is retail sales, right? Not that I didn't work in it, but past customers. Long story, not interesting. If you're a store, you don't want to seem too rich for your clientele, because you don't want your customer to feel kind of low class when he's in your store, right? So, for instance, if you're Walmart, you're not going to dress your place up like Neiman Marcus. I don't know, Chris,
Right.
if you're familiar with
No,
that
I'm
store.
following you. I'm following you.
Right. If you're Neiman Marcus, you're sure as shit not going to be as dirty and hire the staff that Walmart hires.
Right.
Right. So you need to know your customer, and
Yeah.
Apple's definitely Neiman Marcus, right?
I could see like say Way-Ux or Way-UX, however you say his name. He's like, well, the Apple fanboys will keep Apple alive, and that is such a old, dated way to look at it because they sell tens and tens of millions of phones a quarter. That's not fanboys anymore. That's the general public.
Well, again, I like the retail analogy really well because
I think that's right. They're going to be the high-end brand, and that's a lot of people. There's a lot of people there.
like a lot of folks shop at Walmart, fewer folks shop at Macy's, even fewer shop at Neiman Marcus. But you know what? Neiman Marcus is doing okay.
Yeah, I think that's.
Yeah.
I think that is what it is, and I suspect that they will operate in that space. They'll become a smaller and smaller part, but because the revenue is still there,
The revenue per unit is so much higher. They're
Yeah.
still going to be a powerful force.
Yeah.
Don't forget, Apple's one of the richest companies, if not the richest company in the world. So this idea that Apple somehow want to downslope from a business fundamentals perspective is kind of bull, right?
right. Well, it's interesting though because I mean, I see that, but I also see Google really seems to have the really winning long-term strategy here. Like the really Skynet going to control the world. They're hooked in on advertising. They're hooked in on search. They're hooked on automation now. And I think in I/O we're going to see a crap ton more automation stuff come out on Wednesday. And I think after we're going to look at Google after Wednesday and go, okay, the strategy that Google's taking here is a little more clear, and it's just unquestionably I think they're going to succeed. Maybe. I mean, maybe they won't, but I.
So my question is, if Google wins, and again, it's probably not a zero-sum game, right? But when Google wins, who loses? I think there's some obvious losers. The ISPs are losers, right? I mean, the road is going to be dump pipes. To be honest, the person I see in the weakest position is probably Amazon. Only because I don't see, other than like the Kindle, and I mean the the reading Kindle. I forgot the name of it. The Paperwhite.
Yeah, you're talking from a platform standpoint.
I'm talking from a platform standpoint.
Yeah.
And of course, this is a developer show, developer mindshare. I never think about Amazon.
No, yeah,
Other
of course
than
not.
I mean, I purchase a lot of things on Amazon. I mean, I'm pretty sure Jeff Bezos has my credit card number tattooed on his ass at this point.
Yeah.
And that guy should buy me a beer. I mean, come on, how many planes have I paid for? But
Yeah, I want a drone with my own name on it.
right, I want a personal drone that just works for me.
Exactly.
That I can send on little missions. Deliver this Mac that I overheated to the Apple Store in Freehold. Go.
Well, it's got to be Amazon Primeable. That's the only downside.
Oh, fun fact: never order a computer on Amazon ever.
Oh, really? Go bad?
Dead pixels are not fun. You have to deal with shipping it back, and then the
Yes.
manufacturer fights. It's a pain in the ass.
Yes, very much.
But back at the point, I mean, where did these Android devices fall in? I get that they're cheap, and I kind of got the tablets, but these phones are not cheap.
No, the motivation for these phones is it does sort of befuddle me. I think you're right. The pricing's weird. The AT&T exclusivity is weird.
That makes no sense.
It's really, to me, what it is Amazon's trying to find a compelling way to put a cash register in your pocket. That's the wrong motivation to come at it. I mean, yeah, I believe they've worked on it for years. I had a story in Tech Talk today about Lab 126 where they've worked on it since 2009. So I know they've worked really hard on it, and I respect that. And I don't mean to downplay it, but honestly, it seems like the origination of the motivation for this product is to just get me to spend more money on Amazon. That doesn't make me want to buy your phone. Just like the reason Android exists is for additional data points and tracking. For advertising, doesn't necessarily make me want to buy an Android device either. Now, sometimes there's enough features that are enough to compel me to overlook that and still use it. And maybe if I was huge into Prime streaming, maybe because you get a free year of Prime. But it seems like if I'm already into Prime, I don't need a free year of Prime. So I don't know, man.
Yeah, I don't really know what the deal is.
Now, do you think it'll still succeed? Do you think the thing is, it's
Oh,
funny.
I think it's going to crash and burn.
I
But
don't
I'm
know.
always wrong. So
I don't know if you saw the picture, but Bezos was doing his job style keynote, and they had a graph of Kindle sales over the years, and the bar graph goes up and up and up every single year. No numbers on that graph. No y-axis. No nothing. No numbers at all. Just bars that go up. They never release numbers.
well, hey, listen, numbers aren't resolutionary, right? You know what's resolutionary? Making up words based on other words.
And 3D cameras.
Right.
All right, Mr. Dominic. Well, why don't we leave people with a little bit of pro tips? Number one, we want your feedback over to jupiterbroadcasting.com. Click the contact link and choose Coda Radio from the dropdown and send in your thoughts. Also, if you got a little extra time, you want some more podcasts in your ear hole, go over to Jupiter Broadcasting and check out Tech Talk Today. Episode 13 came out today. And while we're talking about Google stuff, saw rumors that HTC might be working on a 9-inch Nexus tablet.
Oh, don't tease me. Do not. Listen, have you played Threes yet?
No.
Oh, go get Threes. It's available on Android now. It's been available on iOS for a while.
All right.
Fantastic game.
All right, I will.
Also, Chris, do you know what's good to do while you're listening to podcasts?
What's that, Mr. Dominic?
Work.
That's true.
Now, I know a certain company that's still hiring. So let me just go ahead and paste this in the chat room here.
Yeah.
Fingertiptech.com.
Fingertiptech.com / wait for it.
#jobs.
#jobs. There you go. Check that out. And we'll have a link to that in the show notes as well. Fingertip.com. If you're in do you want them to be local, though?
Preferably in the area, yes.
Okay. All right. So be on the East Coast and hit up Mr. Dominic over there at fingertiptech.com / #jobs. Because what else, right? Oh, that's the wrong show. Of course, what else would you do? #jobs. Why not? That's what I say.
Well, I'm hoping that the ghost of Steve Jobs comes back and is like, this sucks. Then I'll know I'm really in business.
That would be awesome. The haunting, as they call it. All right, well, we'll keep our eyes open for Google I.O. and probably cover a few follow-up items. And also, I'll be covering the keynote live on Tech Talk Today on Wednesday. So join me, jblive.tv, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern for that. And then join us next week for our take on the Google I.O. and all other kinds of shenanigans. Mr. Dominic, anywhere else you want to send folks throughout the week?
How about fingertiptech.com, just in a very general way?
And also check out Fingertip Tech on Twitter and all other kinds of goodies. You can find me on Twitter too, twitter.com/ChrisLAS. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in this week's episode of Coda Radio. We'll see you right back here next week.